Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. Welcome to another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with your beauties, and we were gonna roll right into your all-time mid-lane power rankings. But whenever you're talking mid, you go, yeah, but the debate, there's no debate at number one. It's Faker, no one's gonna argue. You're being a troll if you're trying to argue. So before we go mid lane, we thought, why don't we just do a full ranking just for your GOAT? So we're going through all, 12 seasons now that Faker has been on the Rift, and we're going to rank them from top to bottom. And the truth is, this guy's lowest of lows is like an average to good split for most organizations and players.
It really is eye-opening. And again, eye-opening when you're talking about a guy that is unanimously the greatest player of all time in League of Legends. Never mind his position. As you laid out, it'd be one of those ones where you're having a conversation, a list, an argument about who's number two, who's number three in that situation, which still is a valuable and interesting conversation. But it is important to pay your respects and get it out of the way and talking about the GOAT and having something interesting. And that is looking through his amazing years in his career. And you said it, even the down years, even the bad years that we're going to talk about, I think a heck of a lot of pros would say, yeah, I'll take that one. I'll take that one in the bank, book that one, whatever type of situation. But you will see that even going through these low ones, and as we build up, you will truly understand the greatness that is the unkillable Demon King.
And you know already, if anyone's been following his career, that the lowest on this list is gonna be 2018. And despite the incredibly tumultuous year, Wolves playing jungle at times, they're cycling through 3 different top laners, it still felt like in that gauntlet run, they go to game 5 against, I think it was Gen G, and you're thinking, this is it. This is where the miracle run where they still get saved. People still had that level of hopium, despite it being the only year that Faker has missed a playoff run in the LCK, and the only full year that he has a sub 50 win percent at 52 and 53 overall.
Which even then, right, even when you're looking as far as deep down, as bad and dirty as it's been for Faker in his career, you can't find that, just barely finding that sub 50% win rate for him. The only year, again, not getting anything really successful done for SKT. The only year Faker hadn't played LeBlanc. I don't know if that's maybe just a little bit of a coincidence when you're looking through some of the champions. It is obviously a statement about the meta that we were seeing outside of even just the instability that was with that T1 roster for that 2018 season. You're looking through a Faker that was struggling to find his form, find his level of impact that was necessary for this team. You're looking through a couple of these ones. Very surprising. Rise. This is one of the champions that and associate with Faker the most. And there he is with a 35% win rate over the course of the year, 11 plus games or so. That is not what you'd expect from your GOAT. This was no question the roughest year of Faker's career.
And there were lots of moments, highlights, lowlights of him getting caught out, looking like he's borderline inting. You could fully feel that so many games he felt like, I gotta make a play, I gotta do something crazy because I'm the win condition here. Even though Bang was still okay at this point, the top half of the map was an absolute disaster, and they were clearly outmatched by the majority of LCK teams. But even the jump from 2018 to any of the other years is pretty sizable. We go to 2020 and number 10 here, and at this point, they've won a spring split. MSI is canceled. They can't go there. This is before the youngins come in. Kana's first year. We've still got Teddy. The problem is the second half of this year is a fall off a cliff in summer, and before they end up bowing out in the gauntlet to Gen G, not making it to Worlds.
Yes, this is another one of those ones where, in the grand scheme of things, it is a bad year. It's an unsuccessful year for T1. But when you look at the, any type of career, any type of situation, the difference between 2018 to 2020 is sizable. Is that increase is one where any team, any player is saying good, maybe even great when you're talking about picking up the domestic title and these type of things, but not getting that trip to Worlds, not having that opportunity, of course, as we know, is so much the center and focus of this T1, of Faker's career. When you're talking about these years, 2020 is one of these ones where it's it gets that benefit of being better than the bottom, which is our 2018 year. But when you're looking at everything else that we're going to lay out in front of you, it'll be very clear why this one doesn't hold up.
And again, the main reason, this is the year that he's getting benched for closer, who's starting for 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row. I know most people weren't saying the individual performance out of Faker was necessarily the issue, but this was full musical chairs with the roster, and closer only hurt his career, or the fans hurt his career, because he was taking so many games from Faker.
And I think you'd look at champions like the Zoe, the Oriana. These were the ones that he struggled with throughout the year. Sub 50% win rates on both of these champions, playing them a considerable amount. One of the ones that you saw that he did have a little bit of success with, but one of those ones where you then realized the team had more faith in closer operating is something like a Kali, which is kind of crazy in retrospect now, given how much of a playmaker we know he can be on that Akali champion. That was one of those ones. And yes, certainly a dark moment in the times of T1 and Faker's career, where you are finding these opportunities to take him out of the lineup.
And that kind of continued into the next year as we move into 2021, where, okay, they're at least making the world championship. This is where the makings of this dynasty roster starts coming together. All of a sudden, we got Kyria. Owner is swapping out with Cuz. They're rotating who's playing games. Teddy's still swapping in and out with Gumayushi, and it's before Zeus joins the lineup. So it was 2 full years that you didn't have a fully consistent roster for Faker to play around, but at least he wasn't the guy getting benched this year.
No, that was one of the things that I think, levels it up just a little bit more as well. And as you said, kind of starting to build out the current dynasty that we know that T1 evolves into over this time. But Faker's role in this team and how he was playing, I think, individually was a level up from the past year. What you saw from him and how he was able to translate that into success for the team. I think when you're looking at some of these angles, again, looking back to that 2018 year type as well, where there is so much pressure, so much of an onus on having to be the one that makes everything happen for the team, that he's overreaching, overextending, over pushing for certain type of things. And I think that happened less in this year. Still a couple of moments that you can pinpoint onto that.
When we move to then more modern times, I mean, 2021, pretty modern, only a few years ago, but people might be surprised with kind of the recency bias to have 2024 this low on the list. But guys, you got to remember this year as a whole. If you just look at the bracket stage at Worlds, this could be number 1 in his career in terms of best performances. But this team was 1 game away from not even going to Worlds. And let's go back to the conversations in summer at MSI, where not only was Faker not an elite level mid laner, we were talking about him as a liability against some of these top tier guys internationally.
And we got to go even further to talk about that spring split, where he did look pretty solid, pretty good. A lot of people saying that this, with him in this type of form with the other talented members of this team, watch out, could be that run back. We're seeing it now. A lot of people had that type of idea early in the year with that. MSI comes around, target bans coming through onto him. He looked so lost on champions that he should be familiar on, and then even more so on the 200 years of Riot Game Design champions that were also coming through. And we were seeing the other great mid laners that we all talk about and hype up be able to find success, be able to take these other champions into that overdrive state, where our GOAT was not able to do so. You go into summer split and you are still floundering, still having some issues with his individual gameplay and the rest of T1. And yes, 1 game away from not even making it to the World Championship. One of the things that we talk and grade so many of these years for Faker is, well, that's got to be the first check mark that you're asking for, is being at this international event. They make sure they get there, and the level up and determination through the event is something like we have never seen from him before.
And I think a lot of that, as we've touched on many times, is, of course, the meta shift. These 80 carries mid that were for the majority of 2024, he never looked comfortable on. We know this guy's been a mage assassin player. That's where he's been able to excel for the majority of his career. And as they slowly slunk back into the meta, that's why he got that pop-off Worlds. But again, you look at 2024 as a whole, and there's more shaky parts of it for Faker than there was that elite level up that we got at that World Championship. 7 spot we move to 2022, which again is a theme of seeing two tales of different splits, because this is the dominant 18-0 spring split, and despite them looking that good, I think a lot of it, this was the time that you were talking about the other 4 members. You really saw the level up of the young guys, and we were all saying, wow, this era of T1, it's not just about Faker. These other 4 guys are elite levels.
I think one of the things that was so special about this year, and with the way that the young guns were stepping up and really on all cylinders firing for this T1 organization, is the way Faker was setting them up for that success was a big part of that year, what you're looking through with him. And of course, a successful year for Faker, and you're looking at a LeBlanc with the win rate that it was having, over 95, around that almost 100% win rate for him, feeling fantastic on that pick. When you look at that spring split, that record-setting split, or was at the time a record-setting split for T1, he was playing at that type of level that was challenging Chovy, the guy that we had talked so much about usurping him as that top dog, that top option in the LCK region. This felt like a fireback. This felt like a shot back in his corner for Faker to have the type of year that he was able to, facilitating and getting that success with the young lineup.
But then, of course, you have the slightly disappointing run at MSI. They slump in the summer split, only to bounce back to get to those World Finals. But he fell victim to the absolute onslaught that was Zeka, of course, throughout that run, taking down straight up the Mount Rushmore of mid laners along the way. But that's one of the few times I think Faker has been outclassed, especially in a finals situation. And maybe the first half of 2022, you would think that year should be higher than 2023, because there were still moments where you thought maybe Faker was past his prime for sure. But I think the big bonus he gets from 2023 is when he goes down with the wrist injury, and you see what level this team is at without Faker in the lineup.
I think that is really the most important thing when you're talking about a year like 2023, and why it gets just that little bit of extra level up when you're comparing it to the other years that we have had with this iteration, with this dynasty of T1. When you're talking about it, is yes, Faker's absence, the lack of having him always there for this team, and how much of a struggle it was without him in that lineup. He gets back in the lineup. It's not that immediate problem solve fix. It is, solving a couple of them here or there, but it took a little bit of time to get back to that operating speed, back to that full force of T1, which of course we felt, and everybody in the LPL felt all the way through the World Championship run.
Yeah, and obviously that's, again, a huge level up they get throughout. We have the insane Azir play and just incredible play out of him in general in that JDG series, and as well against Weibo. So definitely deserves that extra little nod ahead of the 2022 season. Then we start transitioning into the vintage eras of Faker. And you can talk about the competition level maybe not being as high in the earlier days, but the gap between him and most other mid laners during this time was still insane. We start 2016. This is where the Rocks Tigers were actually a legitimate competitor and rival and one of the best teams in the world, but you always felt like Faker had the massive upper hand in that head-to-head against Kuro.
I think this was one of those situations, and maybe one of the earliest type of ones that you can identify the clutch factor coming through for Faker in his career. I think this is where you can start to really believe that it developed. He has these first type of opportunities, this exposure to what the pressure is going to be like, what the moment will feel like, and how he's going to operate. And of course, we all know the story. It is success after success after success in these clutch, these big type moments. Game 5, Staples Center, Worlds on the line. Faker's performance is one of those ones that seals it for the team. you can't look at this year and talk enough about what he was able to do. I think this is still one of those ones where you separate from all the other years that we have talked about. This is still the era of League of Legends where the game is and everything else, and where the other talent pool is for the rest of the world, where Faker's just raw skill and knowledge is so much greater than everybody else that's where you can see a couple of these stats. These numbers are different type of thing. But for me, this year is special because of identifying the early startings of the clutch factor we all know him to become as the greatest of all time.
And really, after 2016, this year, that's probably when you're already saying this dude is locked in as the GOAT. After 2016, we got like 8+ years after that of him continuing to dominate. That's just how, set in stone this dude's legacy is, when he was already picking up that 3rd world championship in dominant fashion. The era a little bit after that, we got to go 2019 next, because I think people forget how good Faker was during this year, even though they didn't win Worlds, didn't win MSI, couldn't get past G2, but this was the second coming of Faker, because you had that 2018 down year, the loss in the finals the year before. This was the resurgence after they won back-to-back LCK titles.
I want to take people back and realize that, yes, we still are in a time where a lot of people view esports and esport athletes in their careers being incredibly short. That a lot of people, after the failure in 2017, the bad year in 2018, there were questions of, well, should this be it for Faker? Is he going to be able to continue his career? Do they need to look at someone younger? All these type of things. There were questions about that, but with a rejuvenated lineup, 4T1, you're talking about Teddy down in the bottom lane. You're adding in Khan in the top side. This was Faker rejuvenated, revitalized with this team. And you saw what type of a difference maker, one of the most elite players in the game, able to take control. The only thing that stood in his way, the only thing that was able to deny him, was the special magic that Caps and Perks had that year for G2.
And listen, case in point of the aura and effect that Faker has is Caps going toe-to-toe with him ascended his legacy. It's just like getting kills against Faker is enough to put on your resume. Solo killed Faker 2 times. Like that's just the aura that was around this guy, and G2 being able to beat them twice is one of the main reasons. Obviously winning lots of these events as well, but that ascension, just beating Faker at SKT, is that level of legacy, even in 2019 when they had the bad year in 2018. The most dominant as a team, maybe most dominant for Faker, even though he was giving up games to easyHoon in 2015. But how about Faker's individual record in 2015, Mark? 71-17. That's an 80% win rate across an entire year.
We're entering a little pocket dimension, a little twilight zone when you're talking about Faker's career. And it's another one where it is that reminder of where we are with League of Legends at this point in time, 2015, and how different the game was and how different the talent scene was. Faker is at a whole other level. The way that he was playing the game and just so gifted right out of the gate, so young in his career. This 2015 year is so unbelievably impressive. And I think a lot of those games for easyHoon, some of them are just situations where you needed a veteran, someone more experienced to step in and play that game for whatever situation it was, whatever strategy, all these type of things. But just based off of skill, having Faker on your team was more than enough of a difference to me to say that it was done and dusted before you even stepped foot onto Summoner's Rift.
And listen, easyHoon was often subbed in and he was playing Azir. He was the best Azir in the world. That was kind of consensus at the time. I stand by. Years later, this is why Faker practiced Azir so much and it became his signature champion, because I feel like him getting subbed out for another guy, how dare you? The audacity. I'm going to make sure I'm the best at this champion. And about a decade later, pretty safe to say he is.
Hey, maybe we're going to see the same type of thing with Aurelion Sol and Smolder in the mid lane, and the way that people have been able to play that one. And he's, in the backseat a little bit in this type of one. Another one of those situations, recognizing like, I'm the greatest of all time and I'm losing games. So this guy can play Azir. I'm going to become the best Azir of all time. And here we are now, where I think a lot of people will say that he is the best Azir of all time. And now we're just waiting for some other ones. 2015, an incredibly special year, given how young Faker is in his career, but still one of these ones where it is so overwhelming. His raw mechanical skill and mindset is greater than anybody else in the scene.
No better exemplified than that Game 5 in MSI, where they draft an entire comp around shutting down Faker's LeBlanc. That's just the pressure that he brought onto the Rift. The number 2 spot, we cheated a bit and combined kind of 2 half years, and that is, you can go from the summer OGN split in 2013 right through to All-Stars 2014. This includes the Zed outplay against Ryu. Sorry, buddy. He sheds a tear every time that clip gets shown. But winning Worlds 2013, their 15-0 perfect run in winter at OGN, and then the All-Star event where they're styling on people using their World Championship skins. This might have been the biggest individual gap that we've ever seen in the mid lane, and a lot of that is because Assassins were meta and Faker was absolutely stunted on fools.
I think a lot of people, and I don't know, we can have that debate another point in time type of thing. That's actually kind of pretty good conversation. A lot of people will say this was the most exciting and entertaining era of League of Legends, and a big part of that is those Assassins being part of the game and being at that forefront. Yes, the Zed, look at that, look at the moves. Oh, Faker, what was that? My man, the GOAT. Yes, this is everyone's introduction to him, and this one is so special to me because, yes, again, the statistics are fantastic. You're really, again, outside of those first years that we talked about, you're going to not find bad statistical years for Faker. Believe it or not, the greatest of all time is going to have those numbers in his category, even from the very, very beginning of his career. What was so special for me about this one and why it gets that type of respect from me is this was the first indication to me, coming from a more traditional sports background, that there's something cooking here. This esports thing, this Faker guy, he's different than anybody else playing a video game that I'm seeing. He changed my mind from just that traditional spot. And I think that is just how different he was at that point in time, how special, how much better he was than anybody else, that even from a traditional sport background, you could understand and appreciate that there is something happening, something special about this player, and you need to appreciate it.
And I think because he's been around for so long, we forget how steep that trajectory was. From his very first game in the LCK to he had only played like a few months by the time the World Championship rolled around, and everyone was already screaming, watch this dude, this guy's the best player in the tournament, he's the guy to watch. And then by 2014 early, they were far and away the best team in the world, and it wasn't even close what he was doing to the opposition. So how's that not number 1 on his list in terms of best years ever by Faker? Well, individually, there were never more 1v9 performances than 2017. Of course, you're looking specifically at that World Championship where you say, yeah, but he lost in the finals. It was a sweep. That team in that form had no business even getting to finals. He dragged them kicking and screaming to get to that point, and the game plan for Samsung in those finals was ban out his favorite picks that are good and just pick Malzahar 3 games in a row so you can press R on him.
The strategy simply was, anytime anything important happens, immobilize Faker for 2 to 3 seconds, and we have a chance to make something happen in this fight. If he gets those 2 to 3 seconds, if he's not, he's able to do whatever. Oh, we got problems, folks. And that is exactly the problems that RNG felt in a 5-game series, given over Galio time after time again. I talked about 2016 being really where I thought the clutch factor started to develop, started to get that exposure for Faker. 2017 is that next level throughout this run. The way that he was able to show that, you know what, damn be how the rest of my teammates are going to play. Damn be what the meta is going to be. I'm going to find a champion. I'm going to find some way to put my stamp on this game, to make an effect, to pull my team across this finish line. Whether everybody's standing and cheering at the end of it or we're battered and bruised, we're going to be there at the end of the day. That was how Faker played, and it is unfortunate that, yes, 2017 doesn't end in the glory of it all with a world championship, and we have Faker crying and Shaker and all those things people want to meme on. But I think that when you look through the statistics of this year, another remarkable year when you're looking through, again, of course, like every other year, but the way that he was able to take that leadership over of SKT and really become the guy for League of Legends is where I think 2017 deserves the top spot.
And, it's the first time he falls from that mountain, right? He's so emotional in those finals, and I think that really showed people, man, no wonder this guy is at such a high level. He is so committed to this game and devastated when they lose in those finals, despite him being the only reason they're even in those finals. So even though they didn't win Worlds, they won MSI, they won Spring, didn't even win the Summer Split, but the level that Faker individually was at, especially at Worlds and throughout that first half of 2017, the top of the top when it comes to his individual performances. But again, you go any of these first 9, and that would be the best career year that most other mid laners have.
I think pretty much outside of the other greatest of all time, the guys that will be on the other list that we're going to be talking about. I think if you're not on that list, you're taking 2018. You're saying, okay, maybe that's not my best or whatever, but I'll take that. That's one in the bank. That's a whatever type of competitive year, all these things. For Faker, that's the bottom. That is the very worst that we have looked at, and everything else, I think, quite clearly paints the picture of the greatest League of Legends player of all time. Mid lane, top lane, bottom lane, I don't care what lane or position, Faker is the greatest.
You could write a novel at this point of stats and reasons why Faker is the GOAT of all time. Double GOAT, and he's going to stay that way forever. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, beauties. Thanks for hanging out, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.